Well, we're here again. Let me get rid of that video, which didn't finish for some reason. I have to look into that. Anyway, it's great to have you here. You guys are terrific. I want to start off by thanking the Patreon members that we are slowly accumulating, and we really appreciate it. I know I'm not looking directly in the camera because the camera's up here, but I can't see what I'm doing on screen. So that's another thing I have to work out. Bear with me. I wanted to thank Biba, Barbara Emberhart. I hope I'm getting your names right. Ryan R., Gregory Stiles, Ann Carter, Michael Sparta Baines, Brimstone 555, Ann Taylor, Trish, Shelby Zimmer, Tom Frosto. I hope I'm saying your name right, Tom. And Nathaniel Harris. Yes, we have that many this week, which is really, really great. And of course, what this money goes to is keeping this show going, because we do have a studio here that we pay rent at. We've been here for 10 years, but I used to do special effects for movies. I haven't been doing as much as that lately. And quite frankly, I prefer doing this to that after, working on countless films and TVs and TV shows and commercials. And yes, I did Mac Tonight. I saw some of you were very interested in that character. That was a big deal for me to do that for, God, it was almost 7 years. So did well from that. But after doing that work for over 50 years and working with people like Gene Roddenberry and Robert Wise and amazing things like that, it's fine to do what I'm doing now, because it's always been a passion of mine since I can remember, since I first saw the lights coming in my room and I hid under my desk. And the time that I looked at the stars and I looked up at them and said, is there anybody there? Evidently someone listened. And then, of course, during the late 80s into the 90s is when I was the most prolific I'd ever been on the subject, and appeared on numerous TV shows with Whitley and Yvonne and Roger Lear. They're all close friends of mine. We really miss Roger. I was there at the implant removals. I mean, I've been around the block. And my late wife wanted to leave me over it. She just hated the subject. It scared her to death. She had really good reason for it, too. So I shut down around 2000, and I stayed away for all those years. But when I came to Ventura and I met Mary, we decided to make But Something Is There. And if you haven't seen that film, it's on the channel. You might want to take a look at it. It basically documents a lot of the things that happened, in a 40-minute film, not a documentary. And so here we are. It was Mary's idea to start Breaking the Silence, and I never dreamed of it doing what it's doing right now, and I don't think she did either. I mean, it's become evident you love it. Judging by all the incredible emails we get, all the wonderful comments, by just how fast we're getting views. I'm very humbled by all this. It's really, you're a wonderful community of people. You have a lot of love in your hearts. That's clear to us, and that's everything. That's what's going to heal the planet. But before I babble too much more, we have a special guest tonight, Bruce Solheim. He's a PhD. He's had a lot of experience with this subject matter. He's written a lot of books, and let's bring him on and let him talk and tell us his story. So here we go. Welcome, Bruce.
Well, thank you, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here, and I really enjoy your art. I just want to say I was just blown away by all of that and your story, and I'm just really happy to be here. I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. I'm kind of overwhelmed. I mean, I've talked a lot about my experiences. I've written these books, but then I thought, I just like the premise of your show, and even though I've technically talked about all this stuff, what haven't I talked about? And there are things I haven't talked about. So that's the purpose of this, you know, even if someone who has talked a lot about these experiences and had a lot of these experiences, what haven't I delved into, and that needs to be delved into for the sake of the community, for the sake of all of us, and for my own sake as well. So that's I welcome this opportunity. Thank you.
Oh, we're very glad to have you here. Well, it's always kind of good to start at the beginning. What
Yeah.
happened? What first perked your interest, got your attention, allowed you to realize there was a much greater reality than the one that our culture
Yeah.
teaches us at that early age. There was something that grabbed you. What was
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, it's well, that it started in northern Norway because that's where my people are from. That's where my parents are from. An island, remote island, 200 miles above the Arctic Circle. An island called Andøya in northern Norway, and I had a remarkable experience. I got very, very sick, and this island. When I say remote, I mean at that time when I was 5 years old, there was no hospital on the island, no doctor, uh, not even a clinic. And the only way on and off the island was by ferry boat or by airplane. And I got very sick. They thought I was going to die. I was in my grandmother's old farm kitchen, this old farm home, and I couldn't move my arms or legs very much. I couldn't even move my head from side to side. I was crying. I had a high fever. They didn't know what it was, and relatives were, it's a little village where we still have the house. I still own it, the property there. It's amazing. It's a very old
Wow.
house. And anyway, I was in this little bed my grandmother had in this kitchen and crying, and 5 years old. And the relatives were coming, because we're related to everybody in that little village, and they're coming in saying, "Oh my goodness," in Norwegian, of course. Oh, this is not good. They were scaring me to death, and of course, scaring my grandmother and my mother. And I cried myself to sleep, and everybody moved out of there. And I guess a couple hours later, I woke up, and there was this bright light in the ceiling above me, and these like the beams of the ceiling of this old farm kitchen. And it was warm, and it was bright, and it was taking all my fear away. I mean, just took all my fear away, and it healed me. I mean, I felt healed. I felt like a healing ray from this light. It was a beautiful, warm, healing light, and I didn't feel afraid anymore, and I felt perfectly fine. And when my my mother and my grandmother came in after this, I don't know how long this thing went on, but I lost all track of time. And when they came in, I jumped up, and they were totally surprised, and they were, totally shocked. And I said, "I'm fine," and they said, "It's a miracle." And I told them about the light, and they said it was your guardian angel. It's the guardian angel saved you. And I always just took it at face value. That's what that was the experience they had, that my grandmother had, and so she said it was my guardian angel. But what it did was it just opened up the doors for everything for me from that point on, for the rest of my life till this day. I'm open. I've been so open to things happening, to perceptions, and to whether it's extraterrestrials or telepathy or telekinesis or talking to those that have passed on, people who've passed on, all that stuff. I mean, it happened frequently and randomly throughout my life until about 2016, when a dear friend of mine, also Norwegian American, guy about my age, a little bit older, died. And a month after he died, he came to me in a vision, which was not unusual for me to have a vision of a person who had passed away. And they talked to me. I talked to them. They talked to me, and they told me it was time to start telling my stories. And up to that point, I'd been afraid to, because I was an academic, and before that, I was a defense contractor. Worked at Boeing on the B-1, B-2 bomber. Had a top secret clearance. I was a aviator in the military. So I had a secret clearance. That's not the kind of place you can be talking about this
No.
kind of stuff. And then, or as an academic for that matter. And so he said, don't worry about it. He said, the timing's right. It's time to tell your stories. And I said, okay, because I've been collecting them. I just didn't tell anybody, or very few people. And so from that point on, I just started writing, writing or publishing these books. So, but it started with that experience, and in northern Norway, and my mother was there, my grandmother was there, my father was there too. But the interesting thing about my mother is that, and I just learned this recently. I knew my mother was very psychic, so she trained me. Now, I never asked her if she had any ET experiences. I never asked her. It never came up that, but she had a very unusual look, and my whole life I've been freaked out by, and this is breaking the silence because I've never talked about this before, Steve. Just so you know, I've been on a lot of shows. I've never talked about this. I was watching an old Super 8 movie of from my family that I had converted. You know how you do that? You take the old Super 8s and convert. And I saw my mom. It was Christmas time. My brother just got home from Vietnam, and they were in the living room of our home. And I looked at my mom and I go, my mom has such long arms. She has incredibly long arms. I mean, she was a tall woman. She was like 5'7", which is fairly tall for a woman. But she had really long arms. And I've always been freaked out by people with really long arms. And then there was my mother. I had forgotten how long her arms were. And it was, I went, there's something very special about my mother, something very, very special about her. And, and I think the hybrid, that's what I think, when I think of her, because I mean, they're really long, they're really long. And she was very psychic, and she was the one who taught me how to do telepathy. We would have cards, and she would, just playing cards, and we would get a really good hit rate. She'd teach me how to do it, how to image the card, how to send it, how to receive it, until my father walked in, and then he would say, put those cards away. I don't like that, because that was the only thing that scared him. He was a deadliest catch kind of fisherman in Alaska. He was a carpenter.
Oh, wow.
He had been a merchant marine in just before the war, World War II. He was in a labor camp in World War II, a Nazi labor camp. I mean, he had lived a hard life, but that he was afraid of that. He was afraid of that. My mom, of course, was not. So she taught me. And but what was shocking to me that I'd never talked about before was, I suspect there's something very special and unique about my mother, and it has something to do with how long her arms were. And I've never talked to Yvonne about it. I've never talked to any members of CIRO or anybody else about. I've never talked to anybody about it, except right now. So there's something that I've never talked about.
Yeah,
that
breaking the silence exclusive.
Yeah, and and it is something that's freaked me out. I mean, if I see somebody who has very long arms, it always kind of jolts me. And of course, when you think of, extraterrestrials or, our star family, yes, often they have very, very long arms. So
yeah, especially the taller variety has very long arms, very long fingers, and
and she had long fingers, she had long arms. She had this strange thing where she how a lot of people's mothers would make casserole dishes. She could hold a hot casserole dish with her hands and not even have to use any kind of oven mitts or anything. Now, who on earth can do something like that? And she thought it was kind of funny. She would hold it, and you'd bring it to the table and you'd say, "Oh, Mom, can I help you?" And she said, "Yeah, here." And she'd grab it, and you'd grab it, and you go, "How could you even touch that?" And I mean, this wasn't just me. It was my brother. It was kind of a family thing that we talk about, is how Mom couldn't feel anything with her hand, or apparently had asbestos hands, So she had long fingers that had incredible ability not to feel pain or heat, and long arms. And she taught me all of the psychic abilities that,
Correct.
yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing when I think about it. So I don't know exactly how everything fits together. I mean, I've had a lot of experiences, and
Yeah,
that's
none of us do.
but that's something that I had never spoken about before. So that,
Thank you for sharing that.
but anyway, that's where it started, and my mother's a big part of this, and I'm sure that is the reason I'm here tonight, or writing these books. And I'm in the middle of writing a book right now. I just got a good draft of it, and I'm going to send it to the editor soon. So, but
Plus, you have comics too.
I have comics too. The comics are cool because that's how I learned how to read. I was struggling to learn how to read, and my mother allowed me to read comics, and the visual helped me, get the words. And this is my first timeless book. This isn't the comic book, but that's
Yeah, no,
the artist. Yeah,
this is a comic.
yeah, there's Dr. Jekyll. That's a spin-off series from the Snark series, which was the first comic book I published.
Right.
But I have professional artists do it because I'm a frustrated comic book artist. I appreciate artists like yourself. I love to do the whatever you call them, the mock-ups or the storyboards, and then I give them to a professional artist to do. I do the stories, the storyboard, and then I give it to the comic book artists, who then do the art, the comic art. But that's how I learned how to read. So I published my first comic book in 2019. I did do a comic strip when I was in engineering school at Montana Tech in 1982, called Snark. That's where the Snark character emerged. And I drew that myself, but I was not happy with the art. I was never happy with
Right.
the art. And then I just kept it on the shelf until I met Gary Dumm, who worked with Harvey Pekar and American Splendor.
Mm-hmm.
And I convinced him to illustrate Snark for me. And then, so we've done 2 issues of that. And now I've done we're completing the 2nd issue of Dr. Jekyll Alien Hunter, which is a spinoff, but that's a different artist. But anyway, I fit all my ET experiences, all those experiences into those fictional comic books, but a lot of the science, a lot of the background stuff is all in there. It's
Wow.
as my dear friend David Wilson used to say, he said, fiction is more truthful than nonfiction. So oftentimes,
Yeah. Oftentimes. Well, I
yeah,
do the same thing with my films,
yeah,
and but Something Is There was really very accurate to my real
mhm,
life experience. As I move on with the films, I'm doing the same thing. They're fictional accounts, but they're based on the things I've actually experienced.
yeah.
So that was your childhood. What happened after that? I mean,
Yeah, well, I failed in college. I should say I had some very remarkable experiences. Probably the most shocking one I can think of would be in there was one in 1973. 1973. I call it special processing, and that is where I it's kind of a classic, being taken. And I remember it was on Christmas Eve, and my aunt was visiting, and my uncle from Norway, and I was taken out of my bedroom downstairs, and taken up, and brought in for what the onto a kind of the classic abduction scenario for observation on a like levitating almost above a table. And there was an insectoid who I describe. A lot of people describe them as I described him as kind of a cross between a Jerusalem cricket and a praying mantis. A lot of people say praying mantis, but it's kind of in between. But that's the character that was there, the doctor character, and then there were some little grays around that were assistants who he was very upset with because they were hurting me. What they were doing was not comfortable. It was like a harness thing on my head that was kind of around or by my head, and he made them remove it. And I asked what was going on, and he said, it's special processing. That's all you need to know. And then he touched my head, and next thing you know, I was in my bed. So that was in 73. The remarkable one in 77 was where there was two of us. There was a witness. There was both of us. It happened to both of us, and it was on a trip we were going from Seattle driving to Salt Lake City, but we got a late start, so we only made it to Idaho, to the wilderness area of Idaho, a place called Black Pine Peak. My friend, I call him Ernie. That wasn't his real name, but anyway, right. I call him Ernie because anyway, I'll tell you in a minute why I call him Ernie. But sure. We drove off the road onto a logging road in this dark field and parked. And that's where the fun and games began because there were these strange lights and smells and sounds, and we couldn't move and he couldn't move. And I mean, I remember what happened. He was taken. He was missing. But I wanted to corroboration. So when I was writing the story for the book, I got a hold of him. I called him and I emailed him and I said, "Do you remember that trip?" And he said, "Yeah, I remember that trip. Do you remember the weird stuff that happened at Black Pine Peak?" And he said, "Oh, I remember all that. The sounds and the lights and he said, "I kind of felt like I was drunk and I couldn't move and all that." So I mean, everything that I said up to the point of where I said he was taken, and then I mentioned that. I said, I think you were abducted. I wasn't abducted, but he was. And I told him that. And then he got really mad at me. And he said, you're not allowed to tell anybody this story. I don't want you to tell anybody this story. If I would have known that you were going to go there with this story, I would not have I wouldn't have communicated with you at all. And then he ended the communication. After he had corroborated everything that happened up to the point where I made the assessment of what happened to him. He said, "That's it." So I kept writing to him, emailing him. He wouldn't answer the phone. And finally, I got an email back from him that said, it was a very curious email, and it said, "Bruce, I do remember. I remember that there were some aliens, and I remember that they said they kind of regretted that they took him because they said, this one's a squealer. You think he'd never seen pincers before." Pincers. That's a very weird reference, right? Pincers.
Yeah.
And then,
yeah, it is.
And then he said, that's kind of all he remembered. But he said, "Maybe I'll write my own story and preempt you. And how did you like that?" And that's the last I heard of him. I never heard from him again. He won't. That was it. It was a very bizarre thing. And then I remembered I was writing poetry at the time, and I remembered I'd written poems during that trip in 77. And I went and dug through my old poems, and I found a poem called "I Sold Out to the Aliens" that I had written in 1977. I had the original poem. And in there, I mentioned that I had allowed this abduction to take place. And I mentioned pincers. I mentioned the word pincers in there. So it kind of made my blood run cold. It's like, wow, this is like I have this written evidence from what happened in the form of a poem, and then I have my friend corroborating, and then but he won't let me use his name, and he doesn't want to talk about it publicly, and now he's cut off all communication. He was a really good friend, and I
That
asked,
happens a lot. That
yeah,
happens a lot. It's not, it's
yeah,
very typical.
yeah, that's what Yvonne
It's
said. It happens
he's
to couples and happens to friends, and
yeah.
it happened to Terry
Lucky he
Lovejoy.
remembers it, or maybe he's not lucky he remembers it. I don't know. It's depends
Yeah,
on
he
your
doesn't want to
perspective.
go any further. Yeah, that's it. And I'm respecting his privacy. He doesn't want to do it, any talk or anything. That's fine.
Yeah, sure. Well,
Maybe he will
it's
someday, and I'll be there to support him when he wants to talk about it. But yeah, so that was 77. But I mean, strange things kept happening. But I'll fast forward to 97 is when I had a very unusual vision with a character that called himself the progenitor, and what it was he had kind of a proto-human look, and he was revolving in space, and he was telling me all this like cosmology kind of stuff, the beginning, the origins of the universe, and all this. It was really heavy, kind of almost, and then a lot of Zen kind of stuff. And I drew a picture of him, right? So I wrote all this down that he was telling me. He said he was the progenitor. That's all he told me. Didn't
did
give me any.
you sent me a picture of that, didn't you?
I think so. Yeah. I think I sent that picture, and
No, that's not it.
yeah, that's the Snark. That's my first comic. Yeah.
Right.
And
It
so
may,
I wrote it down, but I didn't tell anybody, right, until 2001. And now I'm teaching where I teach now, and there was a friend of mine who was an anthropology professor, and she studied ancient religions, and she was a very open-minded person. And I thought, wow, I'll talk. She'd be a perfect person to kind of tell her, about this. So I showed her the picture that I had drawn. I told her the story, and she shut me down. She just said, you're a pretty spacey dude, aren't you? And I said, oh, never mind. Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah. And from that point on, I kept having experiences, but I kept them to myself until I had that experience with Gene in 2016. And then since then, I started publishing my books, and I'm talking about these things all the time. So that's kind of a fast version of what.
it's time to talk about it because
Yeah.
the public really needs to know that
Yeah.
this isn't a joke. One thing that you sent me that really kind of caught my mind. I can't say my eye because I read it, but was the letter that you sent to Judy Chu letter. No,
Oh yeah.
Judy Chu, who was a judge.
Oh,
And
my member of Congress. Yeah, she's my
was she? Yes.
my congresswoman. Yeah.
What really grabbed my attention is when you described the construction worker,
Yeah. Yeah.
because a very similar thing happened to me, and so you look for those things that you can relate to in
Yep.
someone's story that you haven't shared with them, because my wife used to work the Renaissance Fair, and she'd leave and go out and stay there every weekend of the fair. And in this particular time, she usually goes out Friday night before, but she went out Saturday morning. And after she left, there was a knock at my door, and I opened it up, and there's these two construction workers with tin hats on, hard hats and little credit card sized ID type things with
Wow.
like an LCD screen on it, which we didn't have in 1992 or whatever that was.
Right. Right.
And they just said to me, "Come on, Steve, you know what's going on." And they looked this way, and I looked at what they're looking at. And sitting in the street is what looks like an Airstream trailer, but it's not. It's cigar shaped. It has no wheels on it. It's just sitting there parked like a car right in front of the neighborhood, broad daylight. And they took me to that. And so when I was, a lot of this stuff happened, but this is about you. So that caught my mind there when Can you
Yeah.
describe any of that? I mean, I do have the letter. I can put it up here, but
Yeah, no, it's kind of a long letter, but I'll just try to succinctly
yeah.
capture what happened. What happened was that we were my wife and I were in Toledo, Ohio, and we were there to visit my two older boys. I have the second oldest boy lives in Toledo. He has my two grandchildren, and then my eldest son lives in Dayton, Ohio, and he's in the Air Force. He's at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Of all places.
Of all places, right. So, and we were there visiting in Toledo. And, but before all this happened, in end of January, early February 2023, my son and several members of his unit, and they were all security forces guys at Wright-Patterson, all got sick suddenly one day. Just the next day, they were all very sick and very unusual symptoms. Like they diagnosed my son with like abnormalities on his heart, like I mean, and extreme fatigue and difficulty breathing and muscle weakness, and it just happened overnight. All these weird symptoms, and then they were going to do a nuclear stress test on his heart, and then they canceled it at the last minute, and he couldn't get them to. It was very difficult for him to get any kind of testing done. So I immediately suspected that something had happened on the base because it was all of them so suddenly all at the same time. So I suspected some kind of, radiation leak or something, because there's area B on Wright-Patterson, and where all the super secret stuff goes on, and where they have UAP materials. Almost everybody suspects that. But anyway, so I did what I do are spirit walks where I talk to my non-human intelligence contacts, and I wanted to confirm what has happened to my son and these other young people on the base. And they told me that the contractors were rapidly trying to do some reverse engineering and get the stuff out of there and move it before the congressional people get there and start snooping around. They're going to like playing like a shell game, they're going to move it around.
Yeah.
And
they have a
they
lot
were
of hot stuff there.
and they were sloppy, and there was a release or a burst of some kind of toxic stuff and radiation, and that's what was making my son sick. And so I wrote this letter. First I wrote emails, got no response. Then in July I wrote letters, got no response. And then I went to Ohio, and I had told my members of Congress I was worried about what was going on there. Please, help me. And I told them that I have contact with an NHI, and and I've had all these paranormal experiences. So I just put it out there, to them. And we got to the hotel, and I was scheduled to be on the Fade to Black show with Jimmy Church, right? On
Sure.
the 2nd of August. Well, on the 1st of August, in the middle of the night, somebody got into our hotel room. I woke up, my wife woke me up, and she said, "There's somebody in our room." And I was dead asleep, and I jumped up like in full combat GI Joe mode, my military training, and I ran to the door. The door closes. I open the door, go out in the hallway, and there is a man in a construction outfit, full construction. I can't remember if he had a helmet or not. Now that I'm thinking about it, I can't remember if he had a helmet, but he had, the orange vest and all the, the construction worker, like a highway construction worker.
Sure.
And he looks at me, and I'm like in my pajamas, and he looks at me and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry." And that's all he says. And then on the other side of the hallway, door opens. There's other construction workers in there in their regalia, and they say, "Oh, Joe, come on in." So then he just goes in, and they close the door. And I was in shock. I was like, what the heck just happened? So I went back in, and then the next morning I went down to the front desk, Now, why I didn't like immediately call the police or get to the front, I don't know. I was like in shock, right? I went to the front desk and talked to the manager in the morning, and I said, somebody got into our room last night. And they said, well, you must have left the door open. They probably got in by mistake. I said, no, the door was locked. I said, they must have had a key. No, that's impossible. Nobody can get in. Nobody's going to have a key. Then, and I said, well, can you check? They went into the room on the other side of the hallway. Can you check? They were construction workers. They went into the other room on the other side of the hallway. She, taps on her little computer. There's nobody registered in that room. There's nobody registered at all in any of the rooms on the other side of the hallway. I said, you're kidding me, right? And she says, no, nobody registered. So now when you tell me what happened to you with a construction, I've always wondered what was going on. What I figured maybe they were sent there, some kind of, I was thinking of a more like, sinister, but more, earthly kind of thing,
Yeah, if they were even people at all.
Yeah, that's what I don't know. Now I'm thinking, nobody registered there. Nobody's registered in that room. They're just appearing to be whoever these people are. So anyway, they offered. They were very apologetic. Oh well, we'll give you free meals while we're here. And I said, no, I don't want free meals, but maybe you can give me a conference room because I have to do a podcast tonight. If I can. And they said, oh, sure, we'll put it in the notes. Right. So that night I go, the night manager, I go to the night manager and I say, yeah, the day manager said they put it in the notes that I can get a conference room. She looks in her computer screen. There's no notes there at all. Nothing. And I said, well, please, can I have a conference room? Well, I don't know. We might have to check with some people. I said, no, she put it in the note. So finally I talked her into it. She let me have the thing. I did the podcast, went back upstairs after. Sure enough, my wife said, well, she was alone in the room. They came into the room again. Somebody came into the room. She didn't see them, but somebody was in the room. They came in the door. They were in the room. The door wasn't broken. The lock wasn't broken. The door was locked. They came in and she yelled and they left. So it happened twice. And that was pretty scary for her. So that's what happened while we were there. So and then I've never got a response. So I wrote again January 16th. And then I wrote that really long letter with great detail to Judy Chu, who's my congressional representative. I wrote it to all the members of the UAP task force, the senators, the members of Congress, all of them, Republicans, Democrats. I sent it to all of them.
Right.
And I haven't heard,
No, because they don't do well with people who claim that they've been in contact with the drivers of the very thing they're studying. They discount us, and it's really wrong.
And I told them, I said,
human science. So,
and I said, just so you know, I'm not doing this on behalf of my son. He has nothing to do with this. He's not going there with this. I'm the one that's putting all this together. If you're going to blame anybody, if you're going to get mad at anybody or, try to go after somebody, go after me. I'm a father who wants to take care of his son. He's sick. And these other guys I care about these other guys too. I'm a dad, but I care, they have dads too. I care about all of them. And I want to know why they're sick. At the very least, look into it and see what happened. Maybe they have another reason. Maybe I'm wrong. But at least find out and do some testing on them so they know, if they made a mistake, admit it. But of course, they haven't.
No. Especially if it's related to the things they're keeping there.
I think that's
secret. They're not going to go there. If it was just if it was some biological thing, they wouldn't even go there either because it's probably classified.
Right.
But if they all just got the flu, they tell you.
Right.
Of course, so that's it's conjecture on my part, but it's just sort of an analysis of the facts that are there, and which there aren't many of. But
exactly.
They got sick, and nobody's going to tell you why they were sick, and that makes it suspicious.
But it's very helpful when you told me your experience, because now I have a little bit bigger realm of possibility of who the construction workers were. They might not have been I mean, I knew they weren't who he was, but I thought it was a more, clandestine, earthly kind of, we're just guys, we're not even sure why we're here. We're just told to go here. Somebody gave us $500 to go, harass these people,
Did you
that kind of a thing.
did you ever think about doing a hypnotic regression for that evening?
I have not done that, because now I did talk to Yvonne about it, and she said, "Don't you think it's kind of odd that you didn't like call the police or make a big fuss immediately? It's like you just went back to bed." And she
Yeah,
said that's very common for people who have these experiences.
sure.
They go, "Oh, I just had this remarkable thing, but I think I'm sleepy and I'm going to go back to bed."
Well,
You know,
many times in many
yeah.
cases that I've been exposed to, I've heard about people perceived what they're seeing that were actual construction workers or men. I mean, it
Hmm.
happened to me with my grandmother
Hmm.
when I lived up in Bernie with her, which is in the middle of nowhere, like, very high altitude near the Oregon border, a little logging town called Bernie.
Hmm.
And she went with my step grandfather to the store and it was closed. So there was another one in the next little tiny town that wasn't too far. And to get there, you had to go through the forest. This was all tall forest, this little windy road. And of course, as we're driving along the road, there's like some kind of roadblock or something, and there's people standing there again with hard hats on and jumpsuits and asking us to stop. And they rolled the window down. I'm keeping this short, but
Hmm.
they rolled the window down and said you have to be detained for now. We'll be finished with this in a minute, kind of thing. And
Hmm.
I'm sitting in the back seat, and then I watched both of them sort of slump over,
Hmm.
and one of them reached in with his hand, another on the other side, and they just kind of took them out of the car. Very much the way Barney and Betty Hill described
Hmm.
how Barney was taken, and he was just sort of dragged by his shoes,
Hmm.
and we were taken into the woods where there was this what I thought at the time was some sort of construction going on. There was this
Hmm.
structure and all these bright lights on it and stuff, and of
Hmm.
course, it wasn't any of those things.
Right.
It was another experience for me. So, but again, they used that, or our minds told us that we can't possibly be seeing what we're really seeing. So
Right.
we saw what fit our reality best, and that was construction workers and working
Right.
on the road, and they had all this equipment off to one side. And ever
Right.
since that day, I'll be driving home late at night, sometimes on the freeway. I have that Caltrans has these real bright lights and all these
Right.
guys working. I always feel uneasy to
Oh
this
yeah.
day every time I see that on the side of the road.
Oh,
So
understandably.
there's something
For
to
sure.
it. That's
Yeah.
what.
I had a weird feeling driving with Ginger by Mount Shasta. We were we just took a side road, just a kind of a scenic route, and just
Hmm.
out, ringing around it. That road that kind of rings around it.
Hmm.
Beautiful, just beautiful. It was kind of dusk. It's beautiful. Nobody coming or going, and all of a sudden there was some people stopped on the side of the road. It looked like maybe they hit a deer or something, but they looked strange. They were kind of tall and kind of gangly looking. Now that I
Long
think
arms.
yeah, they were once again long arm, and they were like this. They weren't like didn't look like they were hurt or anything. But and Ginger said, "Oh, you should stop and see if they're okay." And I just put on the accelerator and just kept going. I said, "No, I'm not stopping. I don't know what's going on there, but I don't like it." And she was like, "Shoot, we almost had a big argument." But I said, "I don't. That's not right. There's something not right there. They don't look like they're dying. There's nobody lying on the ground bleeding or anything. It just looks wrong. And I'm gonna keep. It's just yeah, it's not right." And
Yeah.
and I know there's a lot of weird things that have gone on around Mount Shasta too. So
Oh
that's the
yeah,
other thing.
sure.
And
I mean,
so
it goes way back to the indigenous people.
yeah,
So
exactly.
it's always
So
been kind of a special place. So
oh man, it gives me chills thinking about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what's been happening since? I mean, you've had experiences all through your life, and
Yeah. Yeah,
And you worked with Yvonne, which of course I have too, as you well know. I started working with her in 1989 and started
yeah.
doing regressions and stuff in 1990 and
Hmm.
did quite a few because I had so many memories that I could remember consciously, but I knew there had to be more there. So I was trying to get into that. So how did that work for you?
Well, I think I've done 4 regressions with her and really uncovered a lot of details of things that are very important to me, and kind of filling in the gaps. And what's really curious to me is how you get a lot of information in the regression, but you get a lot kind of in the afterglow of it, the days after. It's a lot of stuff. It's like it loosens it up, and like a log jam is broken, and the
That's
next
very
day,
true.
and I'm just writing all this stuff down, and and I'm letting her know, hey, I found out all this other stuff, and it's very curious. But one of the things that came out of or that's happened within the last couple of years that is very remarkable is a and I wrote a story about it. It's going to be in this book that I'm writing, but alien hybrid children. And it's kind of interesting because I'm a member of CIRO, and I've heard a number of women talking about their alien hybrid children, and I always listen, but it's a weird thing, Steve, and I'm not proud of it, but I still remain I'm still somewhat skeptical. Even though it's a weird thing, even though I've had all these weird experiences my whole life, all these just you name it, I've had experiences. But yet, for some reason, I just thought, okay, well, I don't think it's happened to me, so I don't quite get it. And it's not that I was not believing them. It's just that I didn't. I just my mind wouldn't let me go there all the way to just
Right.
take it in. So I feel really bad about. I felt bad about it that I couldn't embrace it or whatever. And then I had a very, very powerful vision, a lucid dream with alien hybrid children. And of course, it came in November of 2021. And it, I was like traumatized by it for almost a month afterwards. And I had to set up a session with Yvonne because I needed to, you know, to share this. I needed to understand what's going on. But what it was that I was in it was kind of like a metal structure, some type of a ship, I guess, although I didn't see a lot of details. The thing I was focused on was this metal tank with like tubes or things around it. And inside of this tank were 4 very small, strange looking small children, very sickly looking, very alien looking, uh, and they were gasping for breath, and they were in a yellowish, goopy liquid with like a membrane over them. And it looked to me like they were drowning. So the thing I was thinking as I first looked at this tank is why am I drowning these children? I got to rescue them, but I couldn't like make the move to do it. I couldn't do it. And then I noticed that there was these 3 very tall gray aliens there. Of course, I called them the controllers. That's what I told Yvonne they were when I talked about it. I said they were there, and they were, telepathically telling, controlling me, wouldn't let me take the children out of this yellowish liquid. And I kept struggling, saying, how can I allow this to happen? I was like in tears. I was crying. I was beside myself. I just couldn't. How could I be allowing this to happen? And I said, I got to get them out of there. And the controllers were saying, no, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. And I said, well, what am I supposed to do? I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. I'm very confused. And they told me, you have to care for them. You have to love them. And I said, well, are they mine? Are they my? These are my children. And then I figured it out. These are my children. Well, wait a second. I have children, who are these children? And then I
Yeah.
figured out, and then I started to feel for them. I started to feel, oh my gosh. And they were there's three, and I have in this reality, I have three boys and a girl, and they're in this tank where these three little sickly children with very little hair and the big eyes and the big heads and very sickly. I described them as looking like little tiny cancer patients. That's what they look like to me. It's very sad. I thought they were very sick, and they seemed to be gasping for breath. And one was a girl. Three were male and one was female. And I wanted to like cut them out of there and take them out, and they wouldn't let me do it. They said, no, you're supposed to care for them. You're supposed to love them. That's what they need. You're not supposed to take them out of there. You have to keep them in there. And I was struggling with these controllers, and it was maddening. It really was. And I don't know how long this went on, but finally I started to accept my role, that was my job, was to love them. And as I accepted it, they started to look like they were doing better. They weren't gasping for breath. And I started to communicate with them, and they connected with me. And what I learned was that they didn't know what love was. And they had to learn from me. I had to teach them what it was. I had to not teach them, but to show them. I had to show them what it was. They had to feel it. They had to learn from me.
Sense it.
And sense it. Yeah. And then they felt better. Then they were doing better. And so that's what the vision was about. But it was so. I mean, I had an artist do a. I think I sent it to you. I'm not sure, but I had an artist do a. I did a sketch of it, but then I had a professional artist, do a illustration of it.
Yeah, I saw the illustration, and I meant to grab that. And this week has just been, especially today, it turned out well in the end. Week with my previous surgeries I've had and stuff related to my bladder, and finding out that I'm going to be fine.
Oh, good.
It's
I'm
been
glad
kind
to
of
hear
a
that.
whitewash, but I did see that.
Yeah. So
and the box was kind of in the woods, and I don't do I have it here? No, I don't. You see, I've got so many computers, and this is the main one for the show,
okay.
and I did not get a lot of that stuff over here. I'm seeing. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. So, but anyway, that was a very powerful experience, and Yvonne really helped me in when I had the regression with her on that, and putting it into perspective, because I was very confused. I mean, she helped me kind of understand what my role was and how I did help them. And I've during my spirit walks, I've subsequently asked a lot of questions about them, and what I've been told is very interesting, is that they're being held in reserve. Because I asked, where are they? They're no longer in this tank, but they're being held in reserve. And I'm not exactly sure what that means, and I actually asked Yvonne about that. She said, well, it could be they're in a ship, or they're off planet, or they're being, but that's what I've been told, is that they're being held in reserve. And I've also been told that they have visited me. So that's kind of interesting as well.
Yeah, the whole hybrid thing is really interesting. And
but
I too had trouble with it. It's like, because they showed me one of them, and the other ones I saw in tanks. I'll go here, and there's my lizard guy. I'm trying to see if I can find it real quickly. Well, there was this image. It'll take a minute for Quinn that I did. But this is a lot healthier looking, and you notice that it doesn't have the big black eyes and everything, but it does have the Mickey Mouse fingers, and this was a result of being under hypnosis, and uh, shuffling through here. I saw this too. Where'd it go? Go back.
Oh yeah.
Very interesting story goes with this, and you know, you hear a lot about them today. They call them China dolls. They have the black-eyed children, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But this was back in 1994.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of that was known about. But I just saw the hybrid kid.
Mm-hmm.
This one here. So, and again, this was working with Yvonne. And this one's more grown up, and you know, it could pass for human, except that the eyes are much larger.
Yeah.
So,
And that look, that not only the eyes large, but that yeah, that otherworldly look. You know that you know what's interesting in the military, we'd call it the 1,000-yard stare.
right,
People who've been in combat, they have
right.
what they call the 1,000-yard stare, and they kind of
And
have that look.
you notice the gray seems very proud of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
they do that. It's like, see,
See what we
you
can
know,
do.
and then you can see the fingers, how
Yeah.
long and how bony they are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's really cool.
now, you've done a lot of books, and
Yeah.
this one particular one kind of caught my eye, the cover, because I
I think
didn't
I
think I
know which
had
one.
this. Yeah, I didn't think I had this drawing still, but I do. I did this in the morning right after the experience, and this was sitting next to me on a table,
Mm-hmm.
and I could hear everything it was thinking, and it did not want to let me off that table. It wrapped its leg around my leg, and I felt a very rough texture to its skin, like a
Mm-hmm.
lizard.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess that's a reptile type creature. I'm not sure, but it was very wrinkly, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how it looked. And I did that right after the next morning. But you have, is it this one? Yeah,
Yeah. 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 That's yeah. The story behind that, the female reptilian. Uh, I was having a very pleasant lucid dream with my mom, who I thought was my mom, and we were in. It wasn't a house that I was familiar with, but my mom was there, and I was talking to her, and everything was fine. And then all of a sudden, my mom started to act weird, like very suggestive. You know, it's like, wait a second, that my mom didn't act like she was very nice, decent, but she didn't act like that. She's
mhm.
acting, very uncharacteristic. And then all of a sudden, her face morphs into this face. And she was at the same time extremely terrifying and very alluring at the same time. I mean, the eyes and she's very feminine, but yet very scary at the same time. And and at that point, I'm just like I stunned. I couldn't move. And she grabs me, and I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3", about 250 or 245. She
That's
grabs
why you
me.
fly helicopters.
She grabs me and puts me like I weigh nothing, and puts me against the wall and says, "I can do whatever I want to you, and there's nothing you can do about it." And then she lets me go, and then she's gone, and that was it. It was like the whole point was just to tell me there's nothing you can do. I can do whatever I want. Like I
That's
have domination over you.
that's
And
very interesting that
yeah.
you would say that, because and I know that the people here watching the show and listening and
Mhm.
commenting remember me talking about this. And I'm with Yvonne Smith. I'm under hypnosis. She's trying to bring me up from the hypnosis,
Mhm.
and as she's doing it, this very tall being peers over me, one I'm very familiar with, and she looks down at me. She um, grabs my throat And then looking like this, like she's listening to Yvonne in sort of a black limbo, said, "What are you doing coming to this woman? Don't you know she can't help you? If I don't want to let go of you, I won't." And then she just lets go like that and thrusts me back. And
Mhm.
then Yvonne, who was getting a little concerned, you could tell by her voice, I came out. She remained pretty calm, but Yvonne is very calm, but she
Mhm.
wasn't getting me out of hypnosis um, with her usual method. And
Right.
it just wasn't working. And she said, "What was going on in there?" And of course, I told her about that. But it's almost identical. And we've never met or talked before about these things. It's almost identical what you described.
Mhm.
Um, the attitude, the gesture, the
Yeah.
grabbing you by the neck, and
Yeah.
everything. It, like it's almost the same being, and it might very well be, because we really don't know if they
Yeah.
really appear this way or not, or if they're
Yeah.
appearing this way uh, to us for that benefit, or if they're going to do something like look like a lizard creature because they know we know about that and we think they
Yeah.
exist, so they use that to make an impression on you or get a reaction, and
Yeah. Because
it's
moments
something
before she looked like my mother. So I mean,
yeah,
if she could look like anything, so
yeah.
you can't really trust what she's going to look like, or who they're going to
There's
appear as. Yeah.
there's lots of letters that Whitley and Ann got and went in communion letters that talk about such things.
Mhm.
The morphing. They look just like normal human beings, and
Mhm.
then they morph and it looked like his book cover or something else
Yeah.
entirely different. But the same things happen over and over again. The images might be different, but the effects from it are all the same,
Yeah.
and it's the same attitude and almost the same kind of message and
Mhm.
talk that you hear, and you'll hear this time and time and time again. So there's a real consistency to it, even if what people are seeing is different. You saw a gray, I saw a lizard creature, you saw something else, a praying mantis, but they all behave very similar and seem to have the same. Um, they all seem to be in the same mode.
Yeah. It's about control. Yeah.
Yeah, and but
No.
it changes as time goes on.
Mhm.
It's like in the very beginning, it's kind of cruel and rough, and you get through that, and it kind of goes to another level, and you get through that, and it goes to another level,
Mhm.
and at where we are at now, at the age we're at, I think I'm older than you. I'm sure I am, but it has changed again, and it's
Mhm.
become nothing like it was in the past.
Mhm.
Yet they're still the same.
Yeah. That is yeah, it's really interesting. That cover of that book, a couple members of Ciro that I know, they they can't look at that cover. That's yeah, I can't look at that. So it's too frightening to them. and I and I know that when I originally drew that, I gave that to my friend Gary Dumb to illustrate, but um, I did a very similar original drawing, and when I drew it after that lucid dream, I when I was drawing it, I got physically ill. I mean, I was not having the dream anymore, but I was just drawing the picture of her, and while I was drawing it, I had to go throw up several times. I mean, I would got physically ill from just
Wow.
drawing the image. So, and I guess there's been, people who've said, I'm sorry, I can't buy that book. I can't, you got to change the cover or something, whatever. So, but I did it for a reason, so it had to be that.
Yeah. Um, we're past the hour now,
Yep.
and I would like to open it up to if anybody has any questions they'd like to
Sure.
ask of you.
Sure.
Um, you can see the chat pretty well.
Oh, let me see. I don't know if I can.
Comments.
Oh, I see
Yeah.
oh, comments. Okay. I see the
Yeah.
private chat. I didn't see the comment. Okay. There. Okay. Now I see it.
Yeah. At this time, if you have any questions you'd like to ask either one of us,
Hmm.
feel free.
Thanks for, okay.
they probably would like us to just keep talking about our experiences, but we could do that
Yeah.
for hours. And
Oh,
I try to keep the show to an hour to 90 minutes if possible. Sometimes it's not possible, but overall it has been. Oh, there we are. Why were you chosen and not others' ideas?
I I think there's a lot of people who have experiences that just haven't acknowledged them. I think but I also think um, there's kind of I think Whitley Strieber talked about this and I've talked to when I do my spirit walks, the my friend Gene who's in the spirit world, they tell me that there's certain people they can reach a little bit easier. And I think Whitley Strieber described it as you have kind of a glow about you or something. So what they can see you in this dimension, and it's easier for them to reach you, to get to you.
Zoe has a question. It says,
Yeah,
I have a question. Zoe, what
yeah.
question would that be? Also, you have another one. How many craft have you seen? I've seen plenty, but what about you?
Yeah, I've seen I've seen my son and I actually several 3 or 4 years ago saw a UFO together. I've seen when I was 6 years old, I saw a holographic image of a craft behind my house through my bedroom window in the backyard. Uh, so yeah, a number of times, and I also had a lucid dream where I flew in a craft. That was pretty trippy. And saw how that works. So that was really cool. I wrote about that in one of my books.
Oh, there she goes. Do you think those of us with lifelong psychic mystical experiences and ET contact may be hybrids ourselves? It's possible.
I think it is. In fact, my new book is called "We Are the Aliens." So my idea is that there's this integration that has happened, and that's what um, that's the whole premise of my book, is that this integration has already taken place, is still going on. And yes, I would say yes. And I talked about my mom. She definitely has very unusual characteristics about her that
Yeah.
I just recently kind of put it all together. So I would say yes.
Do you have experienced fear around certain sounds and lights?
Uh,
Not anymore. I mean, I did.
yeah, I would say, yeah, I have to think about that. Yeah, maybe when I was younger. Now I think I've been through so much, and I know I'm going to be okay. So that's the thing. So once you've survived, you figure, okay, I'll survive it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Catherine McLeod has a good one there you might want to answer. Um,
Let's see.
you can scroll back up,
Did
or
you
it's
ever
still
figure
there.
out why
Yeah,
orientation
and
to
I'm gonna go visit the men's room for just a second.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
They'll keep you busy.
Okay. Did they ever figure out why orientation to the galactic center affects psychic experience so much? Experiments show 4 times improvement during a 2-hour window in cerebral time. I ask everybody. Um, I think okay. I think that the way I look at it is kind of these experiences. Every experience opens up the aperture more, opens up the ability to receive more experiences. So that's going to enhance your ability to, your clairvoyant ability, your telepathy, your psychokinetic ability. All that is going to get enhanced, if that's what you mean by galactic center. Uh, so it's all, and yes, time doesn't exist in that sense when you're in that that mode, because in my view, the spirit world, the alien world, so-called alien world, and the quantum world are all really the same thing. As my friend Gene says, there is no past, there's no future. It's just all happening all together at the same time. Uh, Can't wait to read the book. Yeah, it should come out in about 2 months. It's called "We Are the Aliens: A Case of Alien Human Integration." And my other books are out there: Timeless, Timeless Deja Vu, Timeless Trinity, Ansar the Progenitor. They're already out there. And then my comic books too. Comic books you can get on Amazon. All my books are on Amazon. Everything, even the comic books. The Eternal Now, yeah. I hope I answered your question. Was it Catherine? Did I answer your question, Catherine? I hope I did. Yeah. Yeah, and the thing I wanted to say, I know I was just talking to Jimmy Church last night, and this idea, that skeptics always say is that, well, how can they travel? How could this be possible that ETs are here? It's too far away, and but this idea that if we are the aliens, right? If they are like future humans and we are integrated, then they are really us, and there is really here. So it's kind of interesting when you look at it that way. So, and I've always thought this in the paranormal world, the ghost world or whatever. We're surrounded by spirits all the time. I mean, you're never alone. That's the thing. When I go into my meditative walks and meditative mode, I mean, I'm surrounded. So that's why I can't do it all the time. You got to come out of that. You got to shut it down. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good. Let's see here. I'm trying to keep up here, Steve. Sorry. I hope I. The term progenitor. Okay, the main non-human intelligence that I talk to, or star family member that I talk to, is named Ansar, and he calls himself Ansar the Progenitor. He has told me that he was the first human contact that started, that led to the genetic engineering that produced us. So that's where that comes from. And that I wrote a book called Ansar the Progenitor. So that's why what I was referring to. Can you initiate contact? I think you can. It's not always 100%, and it's not always something, what's the old saying, be careful what you wish for, So, yeah. Well, when I do my spirit walks, I initiate contact. I mean, that's what I do. So, but I do it very carefully and methodically, and I've trained myself. It wasn't easy at first. I made a lot of mistakes. Boy, oh boy, I made a lot of mistakes. So I had to train myself in those meditative spirit walks that I do. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. My comic books are on, you can get them, all of them, on Amazon. Yeah, just look up Bruce Olav Solheim, and the Snark comics are on there. The Dr. Jekyll Alien Hunter comic books are on there. Steve, do you want to? There's somebody asked about Stephen Greer. You probably know more about him than I do. Oh, you're muted, I think.
Mike was muted. Okay. No, I've had no contact.
Your microphone is off.
I've had no contact with Stephen Greer. So,
yeah, I haven't either. I don't. I can't. I don't know the man. I mean, I know of him, but I don't really have an opinion of him. I know he's very well known, so I can't speak with authority about him.
yeah, I can't either.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of people in the community going very, very far back, and some of them aren't here anymore. but I've never had any contact with him. I've listened to watched some of his films and stuff, and they're very interesting.
Yeah.
And I got a big kick out of him rolling hay bales around on his property and saying that doing things like that was probably more important than anything else. Because with all the stuff going on in our lives, it's very important to remember to have one and to
Yes.
just to get up in the morning, go out there, and just look at the beautiful sky, the birds flying over, and the wind going through the trees, and just look at everything that's alive. It's everywhere. Spiders crawling up the wall, everything, and you're connected to all of it.
Yeah.
And it's just like one big entity,
Yeah.
and it's a wonderful feeling when you make that connection. And I don't think the vast majority of our population is doing that, and that's why we have so much self-destruction on this planet, to
Yeah.
the environment, to each other. um,
Yeah.
somewhere they just lost touch with their inner child. They crushed it. Someone told them, you need to grow up and act like a man, or grow up and act like a woman, or do the right thing and stop playing with toys, and stop being a child. But when you stop being a child, then you stop losing your sense of wonder and connection. Because when you're a child and you go out in the backyard, it was an adventure for me every day when I went out there. If I found lizards, salamanders, it was just,
Hmm.
you know, and then all of a sudden all that gets tucked away and we start getting mean to each other and
Hmm.
greedy. And I think that the fact that we are that way from early time, that we refuse to lose touch with our inner child and kept that wonder alive, might be some of the reason that the visitors are attracted to us.
I
Because
think you're right.
I don't see why the hell they'd be attracted to people killing each other and creating wars and destroying the environment. And the only
It,
people that they can really reach out to that can make a difference is you and me and all the rest of us and everyone on this show right now who's commenting. It's up to
yeah.
us to make a difference, because they're not going to. They're just going to keep making more money and killing more forests and polluting more ocean until there's nothing left. And then we'll
Yeah.
have to say, we told you so. So, so you've
Yeah.
been that way. You've been that way since you were a child. You explained that right away with what
That's
happened to you.
that's something that I'm told every time I take a spirit walk by Anzar, is that I'm always reminded to keep love in my heart and always operate from a position of love. And it sounds so easy to do, but it is a challenge, because you catch yourself, am I doing the right thing? Is it the right thing? Am I operating from a position of love? And that is really hard to do. It's challenging in this world because there's so
It
much
is.
negativity. So it's really a mindset that you have to put yourself to. And then it applies to everything, whether it's the environment, to animals, to your backyard, to people around you, to the world. I mean, it uh, it does it does work. It does work, and it helps. And if everybody took a little bit of their time to approach it that way, I think we would be much better off. But unfortunately, it doesn't. There's a lot of people who are lost, and
That's true. It was Whitley described it. They're lost among the stars. They don't even know they're submerged in.
yeah, yeah,
But it's going to change. It has to, because it's our very survival that's at stake.
yeah,
And love is not a weakness. It's the greatest strength there is.
yeah. There is nothing
Anger
stronger.
and violence is weak.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but unfortunately, the people that feel that way, they look at people who are loving and are nonviolent as being weak. And we're
Yeah,
taught that you're weak if you behave that way, and it's really exactly the opposite. So,
yeah. I used to work in a prison, and I guarded people, the toughest, meanest people you could ever imagine, murderers. And I remember taking one on a medical appointment, and he was handcuffed and had leg irons, and I had a 45 pistol, and I was taking him to this medical appointment, and all of a sudden he started crying, and I didn't know. I was like, "Wow, what's going on?" He's the toughest, meanest guy in the prison, and I said, "What's going on?" He said, "I'm really afraid of the doctor." And I said, "It's going to be okay. I don't like going to the doctor either, but it's going to be okay." He was like a little scared child, but he had created this monster. So if we could just reach that scared child inside of all these people, maybe we could heal them and cure them from doing these violent, awful things that they're doing. But it's very, very difficult to get through that exterior. And just working in the prison really helped me understand a lot of that. You still have to be careful. You can't assume that you can change everybody because they have to want to
No,
change. But
but a lot of people can change, and I've seen it
yeah,
happen.
yeah,
When
people
they've
can.
completely had an epiphany and they
Yep,
just sort
yep,
of stood outside themselves and looked back on themselves and said, "What the heck am I doing?
yeah, yeah,
This can't go on." And
yeah. Boy,
I
these are
think Whitley was he asked Ann Strieber, his wife,
yeah,
um, how do we achieve enlightenment? What is enlightenment? She just looked at him and said, "Silly, it's love." That always
yeah,
stuck with me.
yeah,
She was an amazing human being and someone
yeah.
who, after she passed, did make contact with all of us,
Hmm.
Mary and I included.
Oh, that's great.
And that's love. That's just really powerful.
Yeah,
That one we'll save for another time.
yeah.
Bruce, it's been
Transcendent.
terrific having you on
Thank you, Steve. I really
tonight.
appreciate it. Really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
it's terrific. We'll have to do this again, and
Yeah,
we need to meet face to face.
yeah.
And we need to get you up here and have you see the studio. And if you
Oh,
want,
I
you
want I
can.
want to see your creations.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
do. Yeah, that would be cool. And it was really nice to meet your the people in the chat there too. So
They're a terrific community of
yeah,
wonderful human beings that we are so
thank you to
blessed to
everybody.
have. And that they're the people that should give you hope,
Yeah, I can
and
see
they
that.
will.
Yeah,
Okay.
wonderful.
All right. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye now.
Bye bye. So that was amazing. It was a wonderful talk. You guys have been great. I mean, I've seen some of the comments. I'll look back through them later, but I want to thank you. Just really, you're a loving, kind group who gets it. And believe it or not, it sounds corny, but we keep this up. We can change the world. We can make a difference, and making a difference is changing the world. So, um, I also want to remind you that we're going to have, what is it? We're having a premiere this Saturday of the film Conversation with My Father, which is the third film in the series of um, But Something Is There series, as we called it. We are working on a fourth one. This one you'll find really interesting. There's not a lot of gray aliens in it and spacecraft and things like that, but it is very much connected to this phenomenon, very much connects to what we were talking about tonight, and I think you'll enjoy it a great deal. And that will be on 6 o'clock tomorrow night as a premiere. And then, of course, after it premieres, you can watch it anytime you want. So, again, thanks to all our new Patreon members. Thank you so much. Because of you, we can keep this show going. And I encourage many of you, if you can, to contribute to that. We have a Patreon account somewhere here. I have a banner for it. Is this it? That's it. Take a picture of it. You might be able to click on it. I don't know, because I'm always on this side of the mic. So, but it goes a long way to keep this going. We have a lot to do in the future and a lot of new people to put in front of camera. In fact, this Sunday we have James Benjamin Pike. What a name, huh? And he's amazing. He came here and visited with us last Saturday, and Mary and I are both dropping our jaws. This guy is amazing. His artwork, based on his interaction with what I call the visitors, is amazing. And so we're shooting him Sunday. Thanks to Mark Sims, we have a Blackmagic professional cinema camera added to our other camera we have. So all these kinds of things where people are donating and helping and contributing equipment is just going to make the shows better and better and better. And we'll be able to produce more quality material and have it be online more frequently. So I think I babbled enough for now. I'm going to end this by once again thanking all of you. You're great. Really love you a lot. Anyway, we'll see you next time, next Friday.